Roughly 1 in 8 women experience postpartum depression after giving birth. Yet, because of the lingering stigma that still exists, many continue to suffer in silence. But our next guest is choosing to speak up about the loneliness, grief, and shame she felt after giving birth in her vulnerable and funny new memoir, The Motherload, Episodes from the Brink of Motherhood. Please welcome best-selling author and my friend, Sarah Hoover. Now, this book was fantastic. My producer, Anna, said it was the most raw and vulnerable book she has ever read, and I would agree with her. You talk very vulnerably about motherhood. So let's go back to the day your son, Guy, was born. You say that giving birth left you feeling broken and traumatized.
It did.
What happened?
And you know, it's funny because nothing that remarkable happened to me. There were no emergency alarms that went off. I wasn't rushed in for surgery. And yet the experience totally traumatized me. I was nervous going into it. I didn't really, as many women are, didn't know what to expect. But I found a lot of what I experienced in the hospital to be really triggering for me because I'd been sexually assaulted in my 20s. The lack of control I felt over my own body, the way the medical staff spoke to me about—
And people coming in and out of the room.
And not really explaining what was going on. And I had 2 little procedures done where they didn't really tell me what was happening, and they told me it wasn't gonna hurt, and then it did, and it terrified me. And I remember looking at my doctor and saying, that thing you just did that you said wasn't gonna hurt really hurt. And I was shaking and crying and sobbing, and she looked me right in the eye and she said, I've done that 2 other times today, and you're the only person that complains. And it made me feel exactly like I was the freak, like something was wrong with me. And by the time, after 19 hours of being there and feeling so much fear that they pulled that baby out and put him on my body, I was so shut down inside. I felt nothing for him. And that made me feel like a monster because I thought, I'm not even a good enough woman to love this baby right. And that set me off on a really long journey through postpartum depression.
Well, let's talk about that because at what time did you realize something was very, very wrong? Did you know you were experiencing postpartum depression? Because people don't talk about it, really.
The depictions I had seen in pop culture or read about of postpartum depression were like a woman laying in her bed, unable to get up and wash her hair, crying all day long. I mean, there were probably days where it looked like I didn't wash my hair, but I wasn't that woman. I went to work, I was social, but I was also having all sorts of strange side effects that I couldn't explain that weren't me. I was filled with rage. I hated my husband. I hated the doctor who I felt had wronged me. I hated my mother who I felt wasn't there for me in the right way. I was extremely emotional, but I wasn't just crying all the time. I felt peaks and valleys of every sort of emotion. And my big red flag was that I never felt connected to my child. I didn't love my child.
Wow. Now something else was surprising for you that you write about, that you just weren't in touch with anger until you had your son. What do you mean by that?
You know, I feel like as women, we're so trained to be polite, to present a certain version of ourselves that we think women are meant to look like in society. So there were things throughout my life that made me angry that I felt were unjust or wrong, but I didn't know how to channel that and how to really understand it. But going through this postpartum depression and feeling so much rage towards these systems that I felt like put me in the position where I ended up, I had to learn very quickly how to work through that anger and make it useful for me. And I actually feel like female rage is really valuable.
It is very valuable.
Yeah, it makes you not afraid.
It is. Well, you know, I think in reading this book, what I thought was that there's this quiet radicalism there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought that. Just in admitting these truths about motherhood, because when you see things on, television and you see things in the movies, there are butterflies and rainbows, and motherhood is actually quite hard. It's quite difficult. And it can sometimes be very isolating, which is something people don't talk about. I want to ask you, after reading this, were you concerned about writing this and being perceived as a bad mother?
I had thought of myself as a bad mother for that whole time I had postpartum depression. And I have spent my life feeling shame about a million things that I am or am not. And I don't think there's any woman in this world who doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I made this decision, I'm gonna write this book and I'm gonna write the truth of what happened to me. And I'm gonna own that. And whatever other people say about it doesn't matter.
And it's gonna help so many women.
Right.
It's gonna help so many women.
And there are probably people out there who read it and think, wow, she's a really bad mom. But that's not the important thing to me.
Yeah.
I've had all those bad thoughts about myself. They don't get you anywhere.
Right.
What gets you anywhere is owning your reality and saying it out loud so that you can help other people feel comfortable with who they are and feel comfortable on their path to being their best selves.
Well, this one will. You write with such honesty in this book. One of the things that really I sort of identified with, you write about your marriage, including your rage at your husband at times, but you also write about your husband's flirtations with other women and the moments you considered actually really divorcing him. You really considered that. And then you spoke to your husband and he encouraged you to write about that. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that conversation.
I said to him, look, I set out to write this book about postpartum depression, my experience after we had our first kid. I didn't originally anticipate that would include so much about my marriage, but I think something we all know is that when you have a baby, it impacts every aspect of your life, marriage included. So it ended up that I was, gonna need to include him in the story if I was gonna be as forthright as I intended to be. And he was like so open to it and receptive. He said, you know what? He's an artist, so he's experienced this himself. He's turned his trauma into art. And he said, make me sound worse if you need to make the story really good. Make me sound as bad as you need to. And I said, honey, the good news is I don't have to do that. You did that for yourself. I just have to tell the truth, and it's gonna be bad enough for everybody. So he gave me the full green flag, and honestly, if he hadn't, I probably would have left him because this was so important to me and it felt so urgent. And I think once you find your voice as a woman, it's very hard to feel silenced.
Wow. Well, in the book, and as you just mentioned, you write about the birth of your son and your postpartum depression, but last summer you had a baby girl.
I did. I got my girl.
Yes. Was it different the second time around?
It was different, and that was by design. Okay. I did a lot of work. I found an incredible person on Instagram, the feminist midwife, and she helped me make a list of things that had made me triggered, uncomfortable, and scared in the hospital. And I went around to different doctors. And of course, I'm so lucky because I live in New York. I have the option of different doctors. And I went around and I said, these are things I'm really uncomfortable with. They trigger, memories of bad things that have happened to me in my life. Are you willing to kind of tailor the kind of care you can give me so that I don't, for example, have to put my feet in stirrups?
Yeah.
Something that makes me feel out of control in my body. Mm-hmm. And I found a doctor who was like, I've never heard of some of this, but it won't get in the way of your medical care, and I'm happy to try. And she gave me a beautiful birth experience. Yeah. And the minute my baby came out, I felt magically in love. Then she pooped all over me, but first I felt magically in love.
They do that.
Yeah, they do that. And it's been such smooth sailing ever since then. And it's like I got the experience that people had told me was possible that I didn't believe was possible. I've had no depression at all. It's a totally different journey.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Sarah Hoover, thank you for being here. Her book, The Motherload, is out right now. Go out and buy it. You can buy a copy by scanning the QR code on your screen. It's a really, really important book. Thanks for watching.